hope y'all are doing all right this morning. Actually, yeah, still this morning. We haven't hit noon yet. I watched the other video. I was dragging ass, so I'm going to try to look less dead. Glenn Greenwald did an interview with Tulsi Gabbard. And in that interview, there's a part in the interview, I'm like, is he awake? Glenn Greenwald looked like he was passing out during that interview. I've been up all night, so forgive me. I was competent enough to wash up and change my shirt in the intervening 20 minutes between me getting up in the morning, getting something to drink, and coming back and start doing the news. I did a rather disturbing story earlier this morning about Swedish prosecutors. This mic, man. About Swedish prosecutors deciding to reopen the case on Julian Assange. Now, this is odd on its face, considering that they were trying to close the case back in 2013. How do I know they're trying to close the case back in 2013? Is that just a conspiracy theory? No. There's the documents, there's the writing between the Brits and the Swedes. The Brits trying to push the Swedes to reopen or to not close the case. They wanted to keep the case open against Assange. But understand why. It's kind of the thing with the obstruction thing in the United States. If you're keeping Assange for a case that's closed, it looks absurd. And it makes it look that much more political in regards to the leanings, because it seems like you're desperate to get your hands on him. Well, in this case, they've considering reopening the case. But again, this is weird considering that back in 2013, the Swedes were pushing to close the case and the Brits were pushing to keep it open. So fast forward to now, it's in court. And it's possible that Britain decides to not extradite him to America, but to extradite him to Sweden, who will extradite him to America. The reason I'm doing the story, I don't want to do a repeat of the last video, but Wikileaks has responded to the charges being reopened in Sweden, or at the very least the investigation being reopened in Sweden. And by the way, just because it's open doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to immediately extradite him. It's the precursor to the potential extradition process. That's what's taking place. All right. So this is pretty straightforward, and I think it's more likely than not true. Under intense political pressure, Swedish prosecutor Eva Marie Persson announced on Monday 13th at a press conference in Stockholm that the preliminary investigation into Julian Assange will be reopened. This is widespread media misreporting about the allegations made against Julian Assange in Sweden in 2010. Of course they're going to misreport. Have you seen the reporting on Syria? Have you seen the reporting on Iran? Have you seen the reporting on Venezuela? Isn't it odd that the moment that something turns against U.S. interests, that the media also jumps on board? But we have a separate independent media in this country that in no way is beholden to government interests. Sure. Kristen Raffenson, editor-in-chief of Wikileaks. Since Julian Assange was arrested on April 11, 2019, there's been considerable political pressure on Sweden to reopen their investigation, but there has always been political pressure surrounding this case. Mr. Raffenson continued, recall that it was initially dropped in 2010 when a prosecutor concluded that no crime at all had occurred. This is true, by the way. Media is not reporting this, but this is true. It was reopened as WikiLeaks prepared to publish the Iraq war logs, conveniently. This case has been mishandled throughout. After Swedish prosecutor refused to question Assange in the Ecuadorian embassy for years, it was only when forced by Swedish courts that she traveled to London to finally question Assange. Sweden wanted to drop its arrest warrant for Assange as early as 2013. It was the British government that insisted that the case against him be open. Again, don't take their word for it. It's on the pages of The Guardian. Since the investigation was closed in 2017, we have received reports of the destruction of records and correspondence on behalf of the UK and its Swedish authorities, surely an impediment to a thorough investigation. Again, right here. They even announced it here that they were destroying records and emails. WikiLeaks has never put out a lie. They can't put out a lie. Their brand goes against it, if that makes sense. Assange was, not that they're incapable of doing it, I'm just saying the incentive is for them to not do it. Assange was always willing to answer any question from the Swedish authorities and repeatedly offered to do so over 6 years. The widespread media assertion that Assange, quote-unquote, evaded Swedish questioning is false. He went into the embassy because he didn't want to be extradited to the United States. It had nothing to do with Sweden, in an overt sense of going to Sweden. He made the point that I will come back to Sweden, just promise that you won't extradite me to the United States. Sweden would not make that promise, in which case he thought his best interest was to avoid being tortured in an American prison and to go into asylum in Ecuador. This is not the same thing as somebody skipping bail and going to Bermuda. This was literally somebody who was trying to evade being tortured by an imperial power for releasing factually true information. This investigation has been dropped before, and its reopening will give Julian a chance to clear his name, Raffleson continues. See, no, that's the problem. When Donald Trump, and I know I'm making an odd parallel, but it's true. When Donald Trump was dealing with the Trump-Russia investigation, it didn't matter that the investigation was bogus. The fact that the investigation has taken place in and of itself gives a potential to find that person guilty. If the investigation was never taking place, then the potential would never be there to find him guilty. But the fact that the investigation exists means that there is a potential, there's a probability. And if the argument is that this case was politically motivated in the first place, why make the assumption that there's going to be the ability to clear your name? It's very possible that if the case is politically motivated, then the outcome is also potentially politically motivated. But to be fair, this may just be something that's been said for political effect. I don't know. Let's see if there's anything else on this. But this is very important, because this is not something that's being reported in the media, and the media is reporting this in a weird way. It's like Julian Assange evaded rape cases. Well, no, that's not really true. He evaded prosecution because he didn't want to be, it's like the nuance is missing in this in favor of the bombastic smearing of rape, Assange, rape. It's a smearing campaign. I'll end it here. I don't want to keep this one long, and I did this video once before. So if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. If you guys know of any ways to push back on this, please write below the video. I'll continue to follow this story. Thanks all.